universities. Her area of research interest is American autobiography, Indian women autobiography, diaspora writers of the United States. She has published in Indian as well as international journals of repute and has attended conferences both in India and abroad. She is also the editor of RDW Journal of Humanities and Social Sciences. Thank you, ma'am, for joining here and a very warm welcome. Before ma'am begins the lecture, I shall request all the participants to please mute their microphones and not to post unnecessary comments in the chat box as it diverts the attention of the listeners. I shall now request Dr. Madhusmita Pati to please begin with her lecture. Over to you, ma'am.
Video. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible,
Yes.
but you are not visible, ma'am.
Turn on camera. The camera is. I think it will be done now.
Okay.
Am I visible? No. Am I visible?
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you are visible.
Yes, ma'am, you are
Yeah.
visible.
Yes, ma'am, you are visible. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. Good morning to all of you. So you're actually, it shows that coordinator IQSC is presenting. If you stop presenting, then I can also see myself here. My thing will be shown. Because here it is showing that coordinator IQSC is presenting. If the coordinator IQSC stops the presentation, mine can start. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, is it okay now, ma'am?
Okay. Yeah, it's okay now. Present now. I click on present now. Then fine. 1 second. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, ma'am.
Something to do with the setting. Can you see the screen? This one? Hello? Can you
Yes,
see the
ma'am.
screen? Okay. Okay. Now, thank you, Sonam, for introducing me, and I'm sure Dr.
Hello, hello.
I think ma'am has got disconnected somehow.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir, but we can't see ma'am. Hello?
I
Hello?
understand. We have to wait.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Professor Basu. Professor Basu, are you here? Professor Basu? Hello?
Live, but
Professor Basu, can you hear me? Professor Basu,
yes, I can.
could you please contact her?
Yes, I'm going to do that. Thank you. I think she's gotten disconnected. Not a
Uh-huh.
problem.
If you extend some help to her if she is getting any problem.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, it's
Yes,
all right?
Hello?
ma'am, you can be heard.
Hello? Hello?
Um,
Hello,
Good
Yes,
morning,
we
Sonam
can
ma'am. You
hear.
can be
Madhusmita?
heard.
Hello, sir. Sonam Madhusmita here. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you, madam. You can
Okay, okay.
speak on, madam. We
So
can hear
I
you.
can speak now. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Something like I don't know why the video call stopped and then the rest. So, as Sonam has introduced, I'll be talking to you about the currents in American literature. So, since without much ado, let me start exactly where I want to start from. That is about any national literature. When we like any other national literature, American literature was shaped by the history of the country that molded it. So, for almost 150 years, America was merely a group of around 150, more than 150, 200 colonies that were scattered around the eastern seaboard of Northern American subcontinent. By the end of the 19th century, however, the nation extended itself southwards to the Gulf of Mexico, northward to the 49th parallel, and westward to the Pacific. The rise of science and industry, as well as changes in thinking and feeling, wrought modification in people's lives. All these factors in the development of the United States molded the literature of the country. But then the story of the of American literature, however, does not begin with the emergence of U.S. as a nation. It begins before US began its existence. The idea of US was there. The reason was the Native Americans. The Native Americans had a rich oral narrative tradition, which was like full of very enriching myths and legends. And the focus of these myths and legends was on nature and creation stories. But today in my talk, I will not be going back to that period. I'll be beginning from, though I'll touch upon a bit on pre-colonial period, but my focus will be on American literary tradition. American literary tradition, if you look at it, began the day the English-speaking people landed on this land, on this newfound land. So when we start talking about, or when we look back into the American literary tradition, we can see that it is very, very closely linked to the broader tradition of English literature. So in the beginning, we see a close proximity between the way in which English literature was written, I'm talking about 17th century, and the way English literature was written. However, the unique American characteristic and the breadth of the production has led to its being considered a very separate part and tradition as of today. Now, when this newfound land was establishing itself, and this new world also was simultaneously witnessing the emergence of literature, which was mainly made up of sermons, histories, autobiographies, poems, but all of them had a religious purpose. So one of the significant work of the 17th century I would like to refer to here is that of Saint John D. Cravaker, Letters from an American Farmer. The very first letter of this compilation, What is an American, is looked upon as one of the earliest inquiries in American character. He was not Quebecer was not merely concerned with the geographical diversity and the immeasurable space, but also with a more fundamental difficulty that arose from the social and cultural diversity. And in the first letter, What is an American, he writes, Americans were not only Americans, but Pennsylvanians, Virginians, and provincials with some other name. And he predicted that the difference would widen. And as we know today, this was in 17th century, and as we know today, America has like there was an attempt to mold American character into one, and the concept of melting pot had come, but then that did fail, and then the concept of mosaic, and then the concept of salad bowls that we had. So American diversity has always retained its face. So what Cravaca we can say predicted in 17th century has found its manifestation in the contemporary times also. So this is the 17th. This is a major work, Letters from an American Farmer, with the first letter being the most prominent one, is of the 17th century. I talked about the 19th century American, the whole of America from Pacific to Atlantic was covered, and the end of the 19th century saw the end of the frontiers. And there was a very significant work of this time, it was read out by Frederick Jameson Turner in 1893 at the American Historical Association. The title of the paper is The Significance of the Frontier in America. Here he propounded the idea that the frontier was the contributing factor to the making of American character and also to the understanding of American dream. Now, when I was going through the syllabus that was shared to me, the PG and the UG syllabus, I saw that there are three concepts the concept wise, there are 3 points which is common. One is American dream, the other is social realism, and the third is novel, American novel. So this concept of American dream, what is this American dream? What did Cravaker talk about American dream in 17th century? Did Turner talk about American dream at the end of 19th century? Uh, no, they did not talk about it, but the concept was there. The phrase American dream emerged in the early 20th century. And David Graham Phillips' novel Susan Lennox. Susan Lennox is the name of the novel. So David Graham Phillips in his novel first time used the phrase uh, American dream. Later on, James Pruslow Adams cemented the concept and phrase. It encapsulated the vision that anyone could rise above adverse circumstances through dedication and hard work. But this particular idea, the idea behind American Dream was always there. It was there with the founding fathers. It was there with the first settlers in the US. So the idea of American Dream was always there. The term came into use in the early 20th century. But the reason behind the instant popularity.
Hello. I think ma'am has got disconnected again due to some network issues. I request all the participants to please have patience and maintain the decorum. Uh,
Okay, I was there till Frederick Jackson Turner. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, so I mentioned about Jackson Turner. That means I have been talking about American Dream and social realism without knowing that I have been disconnected. Anyway, at the end of 19th century, we came out with, we saw a very significant work, that is the significance of the frontier in America. But then this particular work, the significance of frontier in American in the history of America, did lead us to an understanding of American dream. Now, what is this American dream? Where did this idea of American dream come from?
Hello.
She's gone again. Sonam ma'am, she's disconnected.
Yes, I'm trying to reach her. Please have patience. I request all the participants to have patience. She is having a serious network issue, I think. Uh, I'm trying to reach her.
They it went on. Now the phrase American Dream emerged in early 20th century only, and it was David Graham Phillips who came out of or first introduced the phrase in his novel Susan Lennox, and later on James Truslow Adams, as he cemented the concept and phrase. The concept encapsulated the vision that um, anyone could rise above the adverse circumstances through dedication and hard work. Now, but then this term, this phrase became very popular. It gained instant popularity because of because of um, because of the time, because of the timing of the coinage, the Great Depression. Okay, and even Martin Luther King has used the term American Dream in his work. I Have a Dream, which actually alludes the American Dream with respect to racial inequality. So American Dream as a concept is something like when we look at American national character, it is either they people we will find two kinds of, basically we can divide American people into two different categories. One of one of a progressive, the other of the skeptics. The progressives are the ones who believed in the American dream, the very concept, the very idea that that American dream encapsulates, and they see its fulfillment. That is, for them, their life story, their history, for them has been a linear progression. They believed in American dream. They in their life they could achieve the rags to riches stories could become become true for them. But then on the other side we have the skeptics. Now the skeptics also believed in American dream, but history for them was kind of circular. They really could. There was no linear progression in their attempt to go ahead in their life, despite of the dedication and the hard work that they put in. So American dream has affects a lot on a lot of things the way Americans think. It was always there, but the coinage has been is very recent, as I tell you. Now, this basically linked. Okay. Now from here, I would, with this short introduction, I would now move on to the slides that I have prepared. First, the eras of American literature. Basically, the American literature we can divide into these seven different eras. That is pre-colonialism.
Our teacher got disconnected once again, I think.
She is facing some network issues. That is why it is happening again and again. We have to wait for that.
We can't concentrate.
Hello. I'll start with the slides again. I don't know why the connection is going off.
Hello, ma'am. Please unmute your microphone. You're not audible. Ma'am, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll go to the slides. Wait, that's not how it works. Just a second, I am being helped by my daughter.
No problem.
এটা করতে না মতো আসছে no that's not how things work now you have to give a permission it will ask you if you can do your entire screen. I'm having some issues like present now it is not going like tell them don't give you a second don't 1 second. I'm sorry for all this that is happening.
No, ma'am. It's okay, ma'am.
There's something like it has to do with like when I click on present now it should give me permission. Okay, now speak to them. Speak. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible, ma'am.
Yes, audible now. Now, you can see the screen also. Hello, Sonam.
No,
Are
ma'am.
you able
No,
to
ma'am, the
see the
screen is
screen?
not visible.
Screen is not visible.
No. No, ma'am.
Okay. Then let me go on speaking.
Uh, yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you are able to see the screen, otherwise let me go on without the screen. If I get disconnected, Sonam, you tell me. Now,
Okay, ma'am.
during its early history, America was a series of British colonies, as I said, and on the eastern coast of the present-day United States. Therefore, its literary tradition begins as linked to the broader tradition of English literature. However, unique American characteristic and breadth of its production usually now cause has resulted in it being considered a separate path and tradition. I reiterate that. But some of the very important figures of American literature, and they were writing pamphlets and they were trying to extol the benefits of the colonies to both the European and the colonist audiences. The first one that is like we know that Captain John Smith, he is considered to be the first American author, and his work, A True Relation of Virginia, is something uh, uh, that like we consider to date to be the first American uh, book in English. The Revolutionary period also contained political writings of like those of Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams. Now is the screen visible, Sona?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The Revolutionary period also contained political writings, including those by the colonist Samuel Adams. And but very two main key figures were Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself. You are not audible, ma'am.
See, I'm because there's some problem in sharing the screen. I'm going on with my talk. You're not. Are you all able to see the screen?
No, ma'am. I think both the videos are not being able. Means you are unable to share both the screens at once due to some network issue. I don't. I can find out, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going on. Okay. Let it be audio only. Will it be a problem?
We can see your we can see your face now, ma'am, and we can hear you. And I think that is enough for today's lecture.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me go on.
Thank you.
Why
Please
to
go
waste
on.
time?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, this post-American War period was a period where Paine and Adams lacked the constructive ideas that appealed to those interested in forming the new government. But then Franklin sought more a constitutional convention, and then we again in 18th century we see the 18th and beginning of the 19th century, later part of the 18th century, we see a very dominant figure, that is Thomas Jefferson, whose contribution is remarkable in the drafting of the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence. So Thomas Jefferson was also a dominant figure, though he wrote a lot of pamphlets and all, not poems and other things as was by many other writers. But then note the poetry that also came up during that period where can be seen as closely linked to what was going on in the socio-historical setup. The Yankee Doodle, Nathan Hattel, all these poetries are of that period. And Philip Farno was the one who came out with a very revolutionary war satire, and his works echoes Goldsmith and Sheridan. A very important, a very important aspect is that, like of this, the dramas, the novels that were written, they tried to imitate the English people. The novel, the first American novel, which we call The Power of Sympathy, shows a lot of influence of Samuel Richardson. Okay. Now, this new nation in the early part of the 18th century, see, what I am talking about, I'm touching upon the different eras, and I'm touching upon the different movements as well as I am keeping in mind what is there in your syllabus. So, American Romanticism and American Renaissance is the next phase of that has been touched upon in both in your UG and PG syllabus. So I'm now moving on to American Romanticism and American Renaissance. I reiterate that the American literature was influenced by European literature in 1830 and it was when we talk about American Renaissance was located inside the period of American Romanticism. And another very important movement, which was again a part of American Romanticism, was Transcendentalism. Now, I'll talk about American Renaissance first, and then we will move on to Transcendentalism. Actually, I had prepared the PPT with pictures and all to make it, to send it out, the message more vividly to you all. Somehow, the technology is good as long as it serves you. When technology doesn't work with you, then don't know what to do about it. So let me go on with American Renaissance. As I said, American Renaissance was part of American Romanticism. The Romantic period was a period of emphasis upon native scenes and the characters in many literatures of in different genres. It was there. We can see the influence of the native scenes, and we can see the local picture there, and we see a lot of America. The writers were putting in a lot of America into the book. The literature of this period showed the interest in common man too, and that was the part of the Jacksonian democracy. Here, one of the major work, though not a literary work, is Tocqueville's Democracy in America. Then under Renaissance, under Romanticism, and Renaissance comes. There is a subcategory of which is the New England Brahmins. The most popular name that we know who belongs to the New England Brahmins is H.W. Longfellow. They were the writers associated with Harvard and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Then the other category is the Transcendentalists. Transcendentalists, they were confined to the specific space of Concord in Massachusetts, which is a village not far from Cambridge, and this Concord was a home for the leaders of this very important New England group. And the most eminent of the figures of the Transcendentalism in America were Emerson, Thoreau, Melville, Whitman, Harriet Beecher Stowe, etc. So, but these are the major ones. Now, coming to Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism, what is, we all have heard this term of Transcendentalism. Emerson, we are well aware of. Melville, we have read, short story or Moby Dick. But then, who are these Transcendentalists? As I told you, they are they belong to a small. It's a small intellectual coterie of thinkers, writers, preachers, and social activists. And they were there in for a very short period of history. And as I had seen the very first slide where I had divided the era of American literature, Transcendentalism is from 1840 to 1860, but it had a wide influence across a varied range of fields. It was originally based in Concord and Boston, and most men who were part of Transcendentalism attended Harvard College or Divinity School, and which were the training ground for Unitarianism. They began as a religious and spiritual movement, but spread outward to education, literature, philosophy, and social realism. Sometimes seen as a first counterculture in American, a youthful vision over the elder tradition. They were more youthful in their vision than the older tradition. And there is one of the major one is like uh, Emerson. We all know the Emerson did did come out with revolutionary ideas. And I remember one of his very famous aphorisms, that is, every man carries a revolution in his waistcoat pocket. That is like the old tenets have could not stop the world from going astray, could not keep the moral fate of the people intact. So we need to bring about changes. That is what Emerson had brought in. The idea that was brought in fresh into American literature by Emerson. Now, the rest of the Transcendentalists, like Harriet Beecher Stowe, who was like neighbor of Mark Twain. She talked about. She was the first one to write against slavery. Herman Melville, we see he writes about the individual human pitted against the nature. Whitman is again uh, trying to connect with every aspect of nature, and thus elevating the spiritual status of man. Now, coming to the next important figure is Mark Twain. We all know, and we are very fond of Mark Twain, the man in white suit and red shoes is something that I figure we all have seen. Mark Twain is considered to be the grandfather of American literature. The two In Mark Twain, we see merging of two different literary currents. One is the popular frontier humor and local humor or regionalism. Local color or regionalism. These related literary approaches in the 1830s had even earlier roots in oral tradition. Both Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, these are the two works which almost all of us have read, whether in an abridged form or the books in total. But Mark Twain's um, is considered to be the great grandfather of American literature. And if you remember, Faulkner made the first statement that American literature truly began with this one book, that is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And we see all the issues that the society was tackling at that point of time in American society was well reflected in this. Well, were not reflected exactly, well weaved into the narratology of the whole text. So Mark Twain, as I remember, you all have Huckleberry Finn in your master's level. Now, coming the other important figures at the turn of the century, which you have in your syllabus, is Scott Fitzgerald, uh, John Steinbeck, Robert Frost, William Faulkner. So I'll just Fitzgerald, the Great Gatsby, you'll have in your syllabus. But before that, I'll say just two sentences about Robert Frost, like because it is a name probably we all recognize, and he is best known because he for his two works, that is The Road Not Taken and Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, and both of which have they're synonymous with the genre of nature poetry. For Frost, though, was much more than just a nature poet. Then we have I'll talk about is again another turn of the century writer is William Faulkner. William Faulkner was a Nobel Prize winning novelist of American South who like wrote challenging prose and created a fictional Yokapatuapa County, and where his most important novels, The Sound of the Fury and As I Lay Dying, is located. So William Faulkner, and we have I think you all have The Great Gatsby again, which is Great Gatsby is I was talking about American Dream a couple of minutes back, but The Great Gatsby is an American classic and one that should be read for to say it's a story of the failure of the American dream. We have other characters like Arthur Miller, also who is talking about the negative side, what I shown a skeptical view of the belief in American dream. Tennessee Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire, which you all have in your syllabus, again projects the same mirror, that is the disaster faced in life because of the belief in American dream. So from here, I would like to move on. I'd like to. Faulkner was from the South, American South. Here, I would like to move on to a very, very important era and very, very important phase, a very, very current uh, in American literature. That is the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was the phase when, it's something that happened in the New York City in the 1920s. And what happened was, it was the cultural, artistic, and social revival of the African American culture. Now, it began at the end of the World War One. Harlem Renaissance began at the end of the World War One. You have two important Harlem Renaissance writers in your syllabus. One is Langston Hughes, the other is Ernest Hemingway. Harlem Renaissance took in the neighborhood of Harlem in New York City. The movement began with the Great Migration after the World War, and an exodus of African Americans escaping the problems of racism in the South and seeking better jobs and an overall better life in the North. It was also known as the New Negro movement. During this phase of American like after World War One, Harlem Renaissance uh, emerged as a contemporary movement, and there we saw the African American music, African American folk, African American folk literatures were being told in the current context, in the contemporary context, by the people who had their roots back in African culture. And it was kind of led to the Black Pride, the revival of the Black revival of the Black Pride, and the solidifying of Black solidarity. Langston Hughes at that point of time, Langston Hughes is one of the most or one of the best known figures of Harlem Renaissance, and he started the newspaper, which is basically run by the black people. The editors were black people, the contributors were blacks at that point of time. I'm using the term black here because I'm referring to a time when the black was in use. I'm not using the term African American. And Langston Hughes was the one who actually gave Jora Neil Houston opportunity to write for the newspaper that were coming out. Newspapers. There were several newspapers, and Harlem Renaissance was one newspaper, and then the main. And he made a very important statement. That is a phrase: Harlem Renaissance was in vogue uh, because of Langston Hughes. His poetries all talk about the African American sense of pride, as well as a sense of depression, as well as a sense of creating solidarity and brotherhood. Langston Hughes. And Langston Hughes, but the other one, who is Jora Neale Houston, her most famous work, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and her autobiography, Dust Tracks of Love, found Jora Neale Houston moving south around, he was from, I think, I just forget where he was from. Anyway, she moved on. Her family belonged to one of the farming communities in South, and then she moved out of her own place of the place where she grew up. I think it was in some northern county in the northern part of Florida, and then she moved on to New York, where she took admission in Brown University, and she completed her studies. And she was one of the we can consider her to be one of the most uh, uh, like eventful writers, who was not scared of trying hand with different things. But then her work, The Eyes Were Watching God, is almost semi-autobiographical, which talks about this woman's journey, that is the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit for self-satisfaction, the pursuit of this get to the forefront of the rest of the things. Like, even her work was not much liked by many others, many contemporary writers of the time. Even Langston Hughes did not like this work. Neither Nella Anderson, other writers who were of this, Josie Fawcett, other Harlem Renaissance, they did not regard her work to be very to be of any prominence in the whole arena of Harlem Renaissance. and her autobiography was considered dust tracks on the road to be have more of lies than of truth. But it and mainly the most important contribution that Zora Neale Hurston made to African American literature is that she was the first one to use the local dialect, the African American dialect in writing, and that was was very essential for creating the identity. She wrote in the dialect that African American spoke, and that almost native speech. Now, the other important figure, if you look at African American writers, is Toni Morrison. You all have Beloved and uh, what is the other one? The Bluest Eye. The Bluest Eye. Now, Morrison's novel provided a new outlook of on African American novel. And here I'd like to show the link between Zora Neale Hurston and Morrison, that is in the use of language. The same African American dialect has been used uh, by Morrison. But themes are very strong in Morrison's work. There's a strong black self-image that emerges. There's a maternal authority and equality in marriage. She also is very vocal about African American identity. She talks about the shame that her community faces. She talks about the trauma and the family life as African American. And for your syllabus, the bluest eye shows the problems of race and class hierarchies related to poor and black America, whereas Beloved shows slavery in its harshest and truest form, because she does not want people to forget how much hurt and shame slavery had caused to them. And so, and most of her, in India, a lot of people who are working in the field of American studies or American literature, they go to uh, Toni Morrison's work every now and then to understand exactly the African American life, the relationship between African American people, the community, and the white community. So in most of our work, we see a very true portrayal. Of course, women's life is more projected in our work, but then if you look at it, sexism, racism, besides just women's life, it is African American women's life, it's sexism, racism which is projected. But uh, at the same time, while talking about women's life, sexism, racism, she does not leave out the strengths of of the African American society. Now, strengths are self-worth, spirituality, family, community. So uh, we say a lot of and this is also something that we say in the works of Alice Walker. Alice Walker is we all know Alice Walker. It's like the immediately the novel Color Purple comes to our mind. This Color Purple, uh, it is like by Alice Walker. She wrote novels as well as short stories. She lived in Georgia, and she is best known for this book Color Purple. And she was very, very vocal about the double oppressed group of our community, that is the African American women. They were oppressed not only by the white owners, but also the males of their group. So, having touched upon all these phases of African American, I just end up my uh, my talk by talking about the diverse American ethnicity that is visible in American literature in contemporary times. Since they are not covered much in your syllabus, I did not go to that, and also we have to limit time for 1 hour. Coming to when we come to Jewish American writers, Saul immediately comes to our mind. We have Chinese American writer Maxim Kingston. We have Native American writers. We have Silko. We have Indian American writers, uh, Indian Asian American writers. We have Bharti Mukherjee. We have Chumpa Lahiri. Then coming to the rest part of the world that we can see when we find Afghanistan American Afghanistan American writer, we find Iranian American writers. Like it is because it's the land of immigrants, people who go there write of their experience, but they get tagged to the identity, double identity that they have. And the contemporary work is basically talking about identity, the literature of the different people of different racial and ethnic background write about their experience in America from the perspective of their own racial concept, from their own understanding of what their ethnicity is, and whether they see themselves as a fit or misfit for the American society. So this is what we witness in American literature today is probably what Crevacre had emphasized in 17th century, that it is not the geographical diversity, it is not the immeasurable space, rather the it is the socio and cultural diversity of the people of America, which is the unique feature of American literature today. So with this, I would like to end my talk, and now I hand it over to Sonam.
Thank, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such an insightful lecture, ma'am. It was a wonderful experience to hear from you, though we had some technical glitches over there. Now we shall have a short interactive session, and I request the interested participants to please post their questions in the comment box so that I can read out the relevant ones to madam. Ma'am, this is from Khan Sensible. How do you see the contribution of minority literature to the main American literature?
If you look at it, minority literature, American literature as it emerged, what Crevacre had said, I reiterate, he had made a point that there are no Americans. They are Pennsylvanians, they are Virginians, etc., and other provincial names that can be given to them. So American literature from the very beginning was always a literature of people who have come in there. Some have now even like with so many immigrant people there, there are you will have to look for English Americans there. People who have come, who have their roots in England. So the minority literature does have a strong voice. I was talking about the concept of the salad bowl. Now, the minority group, the ethnic group, they're trying not to lose their identity, rather to retain their own identity on this newfound land. At certain points of time, especially 1970s, 80s, 1990s, there was a conflict that people experienced. We see that in that book. What is that book? Uh, Bharti Mukherjee's, which has been made into a movie. Can you remind me of that book?
Jasmine?
Shadow from Ladakh.
Shadow from.
Shadow from Ladakh.
No, not that one.
Ma'am, it's Jasmine.
No, the character is Google.
Jhumpa
The
Lahiri,
character
the namesake.
name, sorry, name
Yes.
Jhumpa Lahiri. I'm sorry. Namesake. Okay, Jhumpa Lahiri. Jasmine's not exactly Jasmine, but Bharti Mukherjee's wife is more talked about that difficulties that they have. All the stories of Jhumpa Lahiri's, whether the
I think ma'am has got disconnected. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, now I'm back. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're
Yes,
audible
ma'am.
now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
now
yes, ma'am.
I don't know in between the connection is going off. Anyway, the minority groups, America has always been a literature of, especially from the second half of the 19th century, to the contemporary science, and more prominent it has become in the contemporary times, that is 21st century. We see that the minorities are always voicing themselves. The literature is full of I won't use the term minority, but it is people who are in the marginal groups and are not part of the mainstream American society. Did I address the question, or the question was something else?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there is another question from Rick Sarkar. Uh, how confessional poetry features in the larger scheme of American literature?
Confessional poetries do have a very like now when it comes to confessional poetries, we have it is a stream where like we take up I'll talk about one of the basic tenets of American character. That is we talk about, all of us know that American one major basic tenets are individualism, materialism, conformism. But another very important aspect uh, is the belief, is the religious belief. It's one of the very basic aspects. The belief, the very idea of that America is emerging as an Eden. It is an Eden on earth. And the very book, The Machine in the Garden, where it talks about how technological innovation is taking away the God's newfound land. So that so this is I'm sorry. So this is coming up to be confessional poetry is has always been there. Like in the 17th century, as I was talking of, there were several sermons, there were several poetries, and all the poetries and the poems that were published had a religious purpose, and in that we find the tenets of tenets of confession there. So these confessional poetries have been part of American literature. I would respond to it as something that is part of the American character. Okay. Did I
Thank you,
answer
ma'am.
that?
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, this is the last question, and it's from Sadhan Rudra. how American theater contributed to the discourse of avant-garde movement.
Again, can you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. How American theater contributed to the discourse of avant-garde movement.
Which movement? I'm not able to.
I request Mr. Sadhan Rudra, please unmute yourself and put forward your
Ask
question.
the question. Yeah, which movement are you? Actually, I'm not. There's little bit of.
Mr. Sadhan Rudra, am I audible to you? Hello?
Can you type the question otherwise, Sonam?
Yes, ma'am, I'm typing it again.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Yes, you may speak, you are audible.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, I'm typing the questions as well.
Okay, okay. Type the question.
Hi, ma'am. Maybe there is some connection problem. So the question is from Sadhan Rudra is how American theater contributed to the discourse of avant-garde movement.
Oh, avant-garde. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
American theater. You're talking about American theater.
Yes, ma'am, American
Okay.
theater.
So American theater, if we look at it, American theater or American drama, we have in American drama started establishing itself from the 19th century, and that in the beginning they tried to imitate Sheridan, as I had told you, like for example, what was the drama contrast, which was based, which was like rather they Royal Tyler took up the plot from Sheridan, and also he tried to imitate Goldsmith, and he tried to write the drama. Now, if you look at the avant-garde literary form, American theater, American drama has contributed a lot to the, or it has contributed a lot to the literary scenario in general, that we, and there are some who have which we can place as avant-garde. For example, Emperor Jones. Okay. For example, the death of a salesman. For example,
Hello, ma'am, you're not audible, like your microphone has been muted. Hello? Ma'am, am I audible to you, ma'am?
doing it.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. Actually, it has been muted.
Yeah, good. So what I'm talking about is American theater has the avant-garde literature. In the avant-garde literature, it has certain contributions which we can say we can fit in, but we don't talk about American theater or drama as a very in that aspect, because they have contributed to the American literary, they have enriched the American literary tradition, but getting that status of avant-garde, except for 2-3 books that I mentioned. One is Emperor Jones, the other is Death of a Salesman. Okay, the other, and now again Emperor Jones is an imitation of the Greek classic. So all these they try to imitate some other writers. So avant-garde literature, especially when it comes to the connection of American theater, is not very well established. That is all I can say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I shall now request Mr. Somnath Kundu, a faculty member of the Department of English, Ramananda College, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you
Am I
are.
audible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are enjoying the web lecture series. I, on behalf of Ramananda College, Department of English, would like to thank
Hello, hello, sir. You're not audible, sir. Hello. Hello. Hello.
hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir. Yes, sir. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Hello.
Somnath, we can hear you. Somnath, we can hear you. Please go on. Somnath, we can hear you. Hi, Somnath, you are audible. Please speak on.
Sorry. Actually, I got disconnected due to power cut. Sorry. I got disconnected due to power cut.
Okay, you go on now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are enjoying the web lecture series. I, on behalf of Ramananda College, Department of English, would like to thank Dr. Madhusmita Pati ma'am for spending her valuable time with us and enriching us with such a brilliant, splendid, and insightful lecture as well. Thank you, ma'am, again. I would like to thank especially the coordinator of the WebMeet, Dr. Narendra Ranjan Malos, and my colleagues for their endeavor the program to be organized. We sincerely acknowledge the service extended to us by the technical persons. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the audience whose patience, presence, support, and active participation would definitely encourage us to organize such online lecture series in future also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We shall now end our session today. Thank you for showing patience. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you
Please,
for all
tomorrow's
of.
announcement. Sonam,
Thank you to
tomorrow's
all for
announcement.
bearing with me.
Okay,
There was
tomorrow.
lot of-
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, am I
Thank
audible?
you so much.
Yes. You are audible.
you are audible.
Sonam,
Okay,
there are some
so-
people who are asking few questions, which I can give it in writing later.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Actually,
I'll
they are
give it
also
in writing
requesting
if
for
you
the
send the
PPT.
questions.
They are also requesting for the PPT. Like, if you could
PPT,
share
I
it
can
with them.
forward it and forward it to email ID. Yeah, I'll forward it to your email ID. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I'll forward it to your email ID. Then you circulate it.
Okay, ma'am.
I think that will be the easiest way.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So tomorrow, Professor Himadri Lahiri will be delivering a lecture, and I request all the participants, please join by 10:30. Thank you. Thank you for the day.